December 5, 2025, 2:00 a.m., Syzran, Russia, 700 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. Inside a massive oil refinery, crude oil flows through miles of pipes. Distillation towers reach into the darkness. This facility processes 90,000 barrels of oil every single day. It pumps out fuel for tanks, for trucks, for the Russian military machine. But tonight, something is crossing the night sky. Multiple drones, heading straight for this billion-dollar target. What happens in the next few minutes will shut down one of Russia's key refineries. Completely. This is the story of how Ukraine turned Russia's fuel supply into its weapon. Russia's oil industry is massive. 38 major refineries spread across the country. They process millions of barrels every day. This oil becomes diesel, gasoline, aviation fuel, and this fuel powers everything. Military convoys, fighter jets, the entire war machine depends on it. For Russia, oil means money, billions of dollars flowing from exports to India and China. This cash funds missiles, tanks, soldiers. As long as the refineries keep running, the war keeps going. But here's the problem. These refineries are vulnerable, they're huge, they're visible, and they're packed with explosive fuel. Ukraine saw this weakness. They couldn't stop countries from buying Russian oil, but they could destroy the factories that process it. So they launched a campaign, target the refineries, cut the fuel supply, bleed Russia's economy, make the war too expensive to continue. The Syzran refinery became a priority target. Located on the Volga River in Samara region, this facility is critical. It produces 800,000 tons of gasoline annually, 1.5 million tons of diesel, 700,000 tons of fuel oil. It supplies military bases across southern Russia. Army units in the central and southern districts rely on its output. Airfields get their jet fuel from here. Without Syzran, the entire region faces shortages. The refinery had been hit before. In February 2025, drones struck it, then again in August. Each time, Russia scrambled to repair the damage, 2 weeks for repairs, a month to get back to full capacity. The costs kept climbing. But the Syzran facility kept running. Russia needed it operational. The war demanded constant fuel supply. Ukraine knew they had to hit it again, harder this time. The plan was precise: use long-range drones. These weren't imported weapons. These were homemade, built in Ukrainian workshops, designed to fly deep into Russian territory. The target was specific, not just any part of the refinery, the crude distillation unit, called CDU-6. This is the heart of the operation. All crude oil flows through here first. Destroy this unit and nothing else works. The drones needed to bypass Russian air defenses, radar systems, anti-aircraft guns, electronic jamming. The path would take them 700 kilometers across hostile territory. Timing was everything. Strike at night, when defenses are spread thin, when repairs are minimal, when the damage would take longest to fix. The operation was assigned to Ukraine's 414th UAV Brigade, known as Taki Magyara or Magyara Birds. These operators had done this before. They knew Russian defenses. They knew the flight paths. Ukrainian Special Operations Forces coordinated the mission. They provided intelligence. Satellite imagery showed exactly where CDU-6 was located, which pipes connected to it, where the fuel storage tanks sat nearby. The drones were loaded, explosives packed into their frames, flight paths programmed, launch points selected far from Russian radar coverage. Then they waited for the right weather, the right moment, the right alignment of Russian patrol schedules. December 4th became the green light. Everything lined up. At 2:00 a.m. on December 5th, the drones launched. They flew low, hugging terrain, avoiding detection. GPS guidance kept them on course. Automated systems adjusted for wind, for temperature, for Russian jamming attempts. Across 700 kilometers of Russian territory, these small machines flew, past cities, military bases, radar stations. Somehow they stayed invisible. In Syzran, the refinery hummed with activity. Night shift workers monitored gauges. Crude oil flowed through the distillation unit, everything normal. Then residents heard explosions. Not just one, multiple blasts, the sound of air defenses firing, missiles streaking upward, trying to stop something in the sky. Some drones got through. The first impacts hit around 2:00 a.m. Massive fireballs erupted. Orange flames shot into the night sky. The crude distillation unit took direct hits. Explosions ripped through CDU-6. Pipes ruptured, oil sprayed everywhere. What wasn't destroyed immediately caught fire. The heat became intense, steel twisted, concrete cracked. Workers evacuated, alarms screamed across the facility, firefighters rushed to the scene, but they couldn't stop the damage. Videos from residents showed the entire southern section of the refinery burning. Flames visible for kilometers, thick black smoke rolling into the sky. Mayor Sergei Volodchenkov confirmed the strike but gave no details. Russian officials went silent. They didn't want to admit how bad it was. By dawn, the scope became clear. CDU-6 was destroyed. Again, the same unit hit in August, the same critical equipment that Russia had just finished repairing. But this time the damage was worse. Industry sources reported the refinery had completely halted operations. Not reduced output, not partial shutdown, everything stopped. The same night, Ukraine hit another target, Temryuk Seaport in Krasnodar. This Black Sea port handles oil exports, petroleum products for export, and liquefied natural gas that supplies Russian military units. Drones struck the port facilities. Fuel tanks exploded. Fires broke out across the terminal. Local authorities reported damage to port infrastructure. No casualties, but the facility couldn't operate. Ukraine's general staff confirmed both operations. They released a statement. The strikes aim to reduce the military and economic potential of the Russian aggressor. Russian state media stayed quiet. They didn't want Russians knowing how vulnerable their refineries had become. But the damage couldn't be hidden. Industry insiders leaked the truth. Reuters contacted sources inside Russia's oil sector. They confirmed what Ukrainian intelligence already knew. Syzran was offline, completely. Repairs would take at least a month, maybe longer. The crude distillation unit needed major reconstruction. Parts would be hard to find under sanctions. Expertise was limited. One source said it bluntly, "The same equipment was hit again, the damage is severe, we don't know when it can restart." For Russia, this was a disaster. Syzran processes 4.3 million tons of crude annually. That's 90,000 barrels per day. Now it produces zero. The facility supplies the entire southern Volga region. Samara, Saratov, Penza, parts of central Russia. Agricultural vehicles need diesel, transport trucks need fuel, military bases need everything. Within days, shortages appeared. Gas stations in the region reported supply problems. Prices climbed despite government caps. Some stations shut down entirely. Rosneft, the state-owned oil company that operates Syzran, tried to redirect crude to other refineries. But those facilities were already maxed out, and many had been damaged by earlier Ukrainian strikes. By late 2025, Ukraine had hit 21 of Russia's 38 major refineries, some multiple times. The cumulative damage was staggering. An estimated 20% of Russia's refining capacity had been knocked offline at various points. Russia tried to compensate. They banned gasoline exports to keep fuel domestic. They drew from reserves. They increased production at undamaged refineries. But it wasn't enough. Fuel shortages spread. In Crimea, occupied authorities limited sales to 20 liters per customer. Price caps were imposed. Long lines formed at gas stations. The Russian government implemented emergency measures. Subsidies to oil companies, tax breaks, anything to keep fuel flowing. But repair costs kept rising. Each attack damaged equipment worth millions. Specialized parts had to be smuggled in through sanctions. Delays stretched for weeks. And Ukraine wasn't stopping. They kept hitting refineries, kept targeting oil infrastructure, kept making each barrel of fuel more expensive for Russia to produce. Military analysts watched closely. The Russian army runs on diesel and aviation fuel. Those supplies remained stable, but the economic pressure was mounting. Oil revenues fund Russia's war budget. Damaged refineries mean less fuel to export. Less fuel to export means less money. Less money means harder choices, more borrowing, higher inflation, unpopular budget cuts. For ordinary Russians, the impact was immediate. Transportation costs climbed, agriculture suffered, construction projects slowed. Everything that requires fuel became more expensive. And winter was coming. Heating oil demand would spike. With refineries damaged, supplies would be tight. The government faced potential unrest. President Putin's strategy depended on one thing: outlasting Ukraine economically, making the war cost too much for Kyiv and its Western backers. But Ukraine flipped the script. They made the war cost too much for Russia. Each refinery hit was billions in lost revenue. Each month of repairs was more borrowed money, more inflation, more strain on the budget. International markets barely noticed. Russia compensated by exporting crude instead of refined products. India and China kept buying, prices held steady. But internally, the cracks showed. Fuel inflation hit double digits in some regions. Local governments complained about shortages. The federal budget deficit widened. The Syzran strike proved Ukraine's strategy was working. Take out the refineries, disrupt the fuel supply, force Russia to spend billions on repairs instead of weapons. And the campaign continued. Ukraine's drone capability kept improving, range increased, accuracy got better, defenses learned to evade Russian countermeasures. By December 2025, Ukraine had conducted over 70 strikes on Russian oil infrastructure. Refineries, storage depots, pipeline pumping stations, export terminals. Each strike was calculated, each target chosen for maximum impact. The goal wasn't just destruction, it was systematic degradation, making Russia's oil industry increasingly unreliable. For Russia, the challenge became impossible. Repair one refinery, another gets hit. Protect one facility, somewhere else burns. Spread air defenses everywhere and they're effective nowhere. Ukraine used the same refinery's vulnerability against it. Syzran's CDU-6 unit was hit in February, repaired by April, hit again in August, repaired by October, hit again in December. Each repair cost more, each shutdown lasted longer. Each attack found the same vulnerable equipment because that equipment is irreplaceable. Russia couldn't hide these massive industrial facilities, couldn't move them, couldn't adequately defend them. All they could do was repair and wait for the next strike. And Ukraine had patience, and drones, and a growing list of targets. The Syzran operation sent a message. Russia's economic infrastructure is vulnerable. The war has a cost beyond the battlefield, and Ukraine can make that cost unbearable. As repairs began at Syzran in December 2025, one question hung over the facility. How long until the next attack? How long until these same units burn again? For Ukrainian drone operators, the answer was simple: as long as it takes, as many times as necessary. Because every gallon of fuel Russia can't produce is one less gallon fueling the war. Every dollar spent on repairs is one less dollar for missiles. Every month a refinery sits offline is 1 month closer to Russia realizing this war is unwinnable. This isn't just about one refinery, it's about 38 refineries, it's about an entire strategy. Hit the economy, drain the resources, make the war too expensive to continue. And on December 5, 2025 at 2:00 a.m. that strategy worked perfectly. Ukraine let Russia start their massive fuel transfer at Syzran. Then everything exploded. The refinery stayed dark, the crude distillation unit stayed silent, and Russia's fuel supply got a little bit tighter. What would you have done differently? Could Russia have defended these refineries better? Or is Ukraine's drone strategy unstoppable? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more stories about the hidden warfare changing this conflict, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this war isn't just being fought on the front lines. It's being fought in oil refineries 700 kilometers from the border. Thanks for watching.